So, when I originally posted the poll on what series of videos to do next, which book to review next, um, pretty much everybody picked Mystery Method. I do apologize for that, by the way. Next time, I promise to have a better selection of books to pick from. This is the first poll I've ever done, so next time, much better options. But I also kind of left a sort of a blank fourth option for, whatever anybody wanted to suggest. And I had a ton of really excellent video suggestions, like just awesome ideas that people had that they suggested that I want to talk about. And so I figured I would do that. I would get together a bunch of these, questions and suggestions for videos and talk about them. I wish I could do more videos in a week, but generally speaking, unless I work really, really hard and my schedule does something a little bit loopy, I can really only manage to get out one video a week reliably, which is unfortunate because I think I'd like to do more, but this is this is about as much as I can handle at this point in my life. Maybe when the kids go to school. Then again, from everything I've seen, my life just might get even busier when the kids go to school. Um, but I mean, these were awesome video ideas, and I do want to talk about them. So let's talk about them. Could you make a video on how to assess someone long term? I got really excited when I saw this question because it's a good question to ask. I know a lot of guys who are a little more red pilled. They tend to be, I don't know. I see a lot of MGTOW guys. I see a lot of guys who just look at it and say it's not worth it. It's better to just have short-term relationships, get the sexual satisfaction that comes with it, and then tell the woman that you're done. I've seen a lot of men with that mentality. It's like if you're going to sleep with women, don't do a long-term relationship. It's just not worth it. Don't get married. It's just not worth it. And I understand that it is there are really very few, if any, incentives for a man to get married with the laws as they now are. At the same time, I think that marriage is a good idea, and I think people should do it. The thing is, you have to find someone who's pretty good to do it with, and then you have to build a strong relationship with that person, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. So, right away, I called up the one person that I could think of off the top of my head who would probably be able to address that question far better than I could. And that would be my dad. I haven't really mentioned this in any of my videos, but my dad is a clinical psychologist, and he specializes in marriage counseling. So I figured, if anybody would want to talk about that, he would have the knowledge to talk about that, and so I called him up and I talked with him a little bit, and the two of us are going to try and get together and do a video, a separate video on this subject because I think it's worth doing videos on, and I think it's good to have that information out there in the world. I know Tomasi at least had a very negative view of counseling, relationship counseling, marriage counseling. Um, and so I don't know. I mean, it will be interesting to hear what my dad has to say. I know that he has a very healthy, long-lasting relationship. My husband and I have a very healthy, long-lasting relationship. I guess it's only been a decade, but we seem to be going pretty strong. So, um, I know that he has good advice. I don't know what advice he has, and so I thought it would be very interesting. When I was talking with him on the phone, one of the things he said that I thought was very exciting, he was talking about, this idea that men, they try to exchange, services like, taking out the garbage, buying her flowers, just kind of sucking up to women in order to get sex. He's talking about how that's just unhealthy in a relationship. How at any point when somebody is doing something to try and convince the other person to have sex with them, that's just unhealthy. That shouldn't be happening. One person should not be dangling sex in front of the other in order to get them to do things. The moment he worded it better than I did, actually. The moment he said it, I was like, okay, good, good. This is probably the sort of thing that you guys would enjoy hearing. And we might all learn some really interesting stuff from that. So um, we're we're all in quarantine, so his schedule is busy, but in a different way. So I will try to set up a time with him to do that, and hopefully soon you guys will be hearing more from that. Around the 48-minute mark, you said something very interesting, and I think it's important. You said she can be with a man for years and have kids, but not really love him. That is a mystery to every man, I think. It's a mystery to me too sometimes. Like, I've thought about that question, and I have some ideas as to how that can happen or how that can be, and I also don't know. On the one hand, some women, let's just clear that off the table. Some women are just messed up people. Like, some people are kind of sociopathic. Some people are really narcissistic. Some people are just not good people. And so, if you're a guy who happens to get into a marriage or a long-term relationship with a guy, with a woman, and she happens to be one of these really not nice people, yeah, she can be capable of doing all sorts of really horrible things that you would not necessarily expect of your average person in an average relationship. Some people are just cruel and nasty. How many people who are not, mentally ill in one of the less fun ways, you know, borderline personality disorder, sociopathy. Not that there are many women with that. Any of those really, really dramatic kinds of ways. When you rule out that, how many of these women are just average, normal women who just up and leave their husband because they decide they don't love him anymore? I do not know what percentage of women who just up and leave their husbands because they just don't love him anymore, what percentage of women are like that. And is it that they never loved him or that they just don't love him anymore? And, I looked up Eat, Pray, Love because I had never read it. And so I read the Wikipedia summary. And one of the things that really caught me was this idea that the protagonist, the main character, the lady who wrote it, early on, she talks about how she always felt unsatisfied in her marriage. And I mean, maybe it's not like that in the book. Maybe that was just the Wikipedia version. But I've thought about that. And I've wondered many times how many women get into marriages or just really, really long-term relationships where they're just never quite satisfied, but they kind of just settled into it. In another video earlier, I talked about that gal I knew who, she'd had one boyfriend. Like, she started dating and she just stayed with that one boyfriend. And at some point, people were asking her, "Well, are you going to marry him?" And she's like, "I guess." It's like, was he really her first choice, or did she just stick with him because he was there and he was comfortable, and I guess she just didn't want to leave that situation? I mean, I don't know, but I think women do occasionally settle into those situations. I know there was one boyfriend I had who he was not a good guy. I had fun with him because he wasn't boring, which is really not a good thing to say, but he wasn't boring because he was a chronic liar. And so what I would do is I would listen to him talk, and I would sift through everything that he said and try to spot the lie. It was like this never-ending game of, of I spy. Where is he lying now? There's a lie in here somewhere. There always is. So where is it this time? Okay, if I add up all his stories, these two don't line up. So he's lying somewhere in this spot. And I would do that. Like, I would sit around listening to this guy talk and just do that for, pretty much the entire relationship. If you ever want to know what that guy was like, go and look up the textbook description of a sociopath. I'm not saying the guy was a sociopath, but that's exactly what he was like. And so if you want to know what he was like as a person, just look that up and you'll have a good picture. My mother was terrified I was going to end up settling down with this guy, and I don't think I was that stupid because I knew he was a horrible person. Um, but at the same time, I do know that's a danger that happens. Like, I had a friend, she got together with this one guy, and she was one of those girls, because we grew up in a very conservative area, who was, she was going to stay a virgin until she got married. And so she's dating this guy and dating this guy and dating this guy and very religiously sticking to her, I'm going to be a virgin until I get married. And he went and cheated on her with some other girl, got the other girl pregnant. And so then he had a kid. And, he didn't tell her until she caught him. Like, the paternity test came back and he was the father. And she found it in the mail or something like that. And at that point, I'm sitting there and we're walking around talking about this. And I'm looking at her like, you're going to leave him, right? And she's like, well, I'm just not ready to yet. And it's like, no, honey, like you need to leave him. Like, I'm not going to put pressure on you because I've been in those relationships where it's like, well, I'm going to leave him eventually, but not right now, which sounds bad. But at the time that I was in that relationship, I stayed in relationships with people who were not committed to me so that if I needed to bail out, I didn't feel guilty. And that's why I hung out with a lot of pickup artists, like not a lot, but a few pickup artists, because they were out playing the field and spinning their plates, and I knew that if I dropped off, I was just one plate that happened to get dropped off. So I do understand the mentality of I'm in this right here as a short-term companionship, friends with benefits kind of thing, but I know it's not permanent. But this gal never left the guy, and I knew that when I talked to her. She was like, oh, I'll leave him eventually. I was like, okay, I'm going to hold you to that. And I didn't push her too much because one of her friends had been giving her just all sorts of hell. One of our mutual former friends. These people aren't my friends anymore. It's just kind of doesn't happen that way. But one of our mutual at the time friends was really giving her a hard time. You got to leave this guy. You got to leave this guy. This guy is no good. You got to leave him. He cheated on you, which is bad. He got another girl pregnant, which is bad. He lied to you about it. That's the final nail in the coffin. Just get the hell away from him. And she wouldn't do it. And last I saw, she was still with him. Years had passed. Um, I is a girl like that going to end up saying, well, I was never really satisfied? I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be terribly shocked. I don't see her doing it necessarily, but I do see women occasionally, especially if they've been doing the whole, riding of the cock carousel. I can see women doing that, where they get together with a guy and he's comfortable and they're like, okay, it's good enough for now, and then they start getting restless and it's like, I just never really felt satisfied. Did they ever really love him? I don't know. I don't know. I was in a relationship. I've mentioned the alcoholic that I was in a relationship with. He was, he was one of those guys that I looked at and it was like he was the best companionship that I could find in all of my hometowns. So I kept dating him, even though he was a raging alcoholic and he was mean. He was, he was good looking and he was a nice cuddler, which I really appreciated. I cared about him. I did care about him. And at the same time, I knew it was never going to work out. Like, I needed to get out of that town because I didn't belong in that town. I didn't have friends in that town. I needed to get out at some point in my life before I died. I knew that. I would not be a happy person if I spent my whole life there. And I knew that. I knew that before I hit adulthood. I could not really open up and talk to him. And that never sat well with me. Like, he was really handsome. He was a great cuddler. He and I would sit around. We'd watch movies after I got off work when I was tired and all I wanted to do was sit around and watch a movie. Like, he did that with me. It was really, really nice. I really appreciated it, but I could not talk to him. I couldn't talk to a lot of people in my hometown. If you watch the the Rational Male Review. Like, imagine talking to that. Like, imagine just sitting around talking to that all the time. Like, not everybody's going to want to do that. Some people want to just sit back and open up a beer and relax and unwind. They don't want to have like, a million questions going their way and like all these different ideas about, the nature of human sexuality or, any other number of crazy things that I get obsessed about. Like, when I had my abortion, I was obsessed with abortion. I was reading up on abortion. I was talking about abortion. I was looking into the ethics of abortion and the ethics behind the different sides of the abortion debate, and it was fascinating to me. And I'm sure it was just annoying as hell to listen to me go on and on and on about it. So yeah, like I knew I needed somebody who was going to be content listening to me talk, and he wasn't that guy. And so I liked him. I cared about him. I I really enjoyed his company a lot. On some level or another, insofar as you can love someone that you've got a friends with benefits kind of relationship with, I loved him. Was it the kind of love that I have for my husband? Not even close. Not even close. Not at all really. Was it love? You know, in a very love thy neighbor kind of sense. Yeah, I suppose I cared about him. I went to AA meetings to try and ask for advice on how to deal with his problems, and they weren't particularly helpful, but at least I tried. Um, I cared until then. Eventually I just stopped caring because he kept on breaking up with me. He kept on picking fights with me, like over stuff that I didn't do anything wrong. He'd just get offended and get upset over. Well, he'd get drunk. He'd get drunk. He'd blame me for something that I didn't do. He'd break up with me and tell me he never wanted to see me again. He'd get drunker. Then he'd call me up and say, "Hey, you can come over if you want." It's like, yeah, the relationship is just a pile of shit at that point. It's like, well, do I want to cuddle on a couch and watch a movie? Yes, I do. Am I going to go do that? Yes, I am. Am I going to stay loyal to him for the rest of my life? He hasn't been loyal to me. Why the hell should I give him my loyalty? Like, how stupid am I? No, but it does feel nice cuddling on a couch sometimes with somebody. Um, and he was not committed to me at all, so I didn't feel bad. So I wonder, like, is that what it is? Is that what it's like when women marry men that they eventually divorce? Where I thought I loved him, but then later on they just sort of change their minds. Like, how does that work? Like, it's kind of a mystery to me too. I don't entirely understand. Like, I can kind of guess at it. I can kind of talk about some situations that I've seen. Oh, I know a good one. It was my gender studies class in college. I took gender studies in college. It was one of the classes where I really wanted my money back afterward, but I dropped out of it and flunked out of it too. So, it didn't work out so well. Like, I was a horrible student, but it was a really not that great class. Um, but, at one point, one of my fellow gender studies classmates, she was a housewife in her mid 30s. And, or was it early to mid 30s, about my age right now. And I think I gave her a ride to the college in my car. And she started talking. And she told me about how, you guys will be familiar with the man's end of this story, but she was telling me about this in the car. She used to party all the time when she was young. She used to have a great time, party, party, party. She'd date bad boys. She really liked bad boys. And then at some point she met her husband. He was just so different from like everybody that she had ever dated before. He was a really solid guy. Read this as beta. He was really beta. And he was, dependable and reliable. And he liked to sit around and watch TV. I like to sit around and watch TV. Like, that's my idea of a date night with my husband, but that's my idea of a fun time. Her idea of a fun time was going out and partying. But, he was dependable and reliable, and he seemed like good husband material. So she married him because that's what you're supposed to do. And then they had some kids, which is what you're supposed to do. And she found herself just hating her life. She hated the fact that he didn't want to go out and party and be rowdy. She hated the fact that she had kids and she felt like they were tethering her down. She hated the fact that everything in her life was so quiet and boring and predictable. She hated the fact that she just couldn't go out and have fun anymore. And she was telling me about all this and telling me about how she just really regretted her life. And I'm sitting there driving the car. I was, what, 18 years old at the time. And I'm thinking to myself, you're a really horrible person. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm sure you can get into that situation. Like, I totally see how she got into that situation, especially after reading The Rational Male. It's like she's like a textbook case, but it doesn't change the fact that it's like you regret marrying your husband, you regret having kids. Like, really? And then you're telling some 18-year-old girl all this, like you're protecting her from something. It's like, number one, pick a better husband if you don't like your husband. And number two, you've already had kids, so it's a little bit late for regrets now, isn't it? But there she was in a gender studies class, so I have no idea how that relationship ended up going down. Um, God. Did she ever really love him? Like, did she ever really love him? Do women who have hit the wall and find themselves suddenly magically attracted to some really really beta guy going, "Oh, Mr. White Knight, I've suddenly realized that you're exactly what I wanted all along and you were just here waiting for me." Do they really love the guy? Maybe, maybe not. It's a little unnerving. Like, I mean, I really don't know. Like, I've always loved my husband. Like, even when we have disagreements, even when we have things that we don't, get along well on, things that, like, every relationship you come across, like, little burrs in the relationship where you'll come across things that don't always run smoothly. But I still loved him, and he was still the best decision that I could have possibly have made ever. Like, you know, when it comes to the list of good decisions that I've made in my life, marrying my husband or choosing my husband, definitely right up there in the top, if not the number one best decision I ever made in my life. Having the kids, also a really good decision. Becoming a stripper, maybe number three after the husband and the kids, but it's definitely up there too. um, I cannot possibly see myself ever regretting it. Even at the worst moments that we've ever had together, I never regretted it. So, have I seen people going through this process? Yes. Do I understand it? Not entirely. No, I can't say that I do. Yikes. And just like magic, we're in a new room. This is what happens when you are quarantined in a very cozy but not very large house. We've got a lot of rooms doing double duty right now, so I move around as I do my videos. Could you please make videos or a series of videos sharing your insights and experiences on below topics? Stages of the menstrual cycle, what a woman experiences in each of those stages, and any suggestions, do's or don'ts during each phase for men, and what qualities, features in a man arouses, not just attracts, a woman. I think it changes from woman to woman, and I think there are variables that will affect that. So if you are one of those guys who thinks that you can kind of set a clock and say, okay, she's had her period right now, so approximately 2 weeks from now, she's going to be all over me. And then if she's not all over me approximately 2 weeks from now, then that means that she's not thinking of me as her alpha male. It's not exactly that simple because, if she's taking the pill, that's going to really screw with that clock. If she has any health problems, any underlying health problems, anything else going on in her life, if she just gave birth, it's really going to screw up that clock. Some women have irregular periods, and so you really can't tell. Like, it's been 2-3 months, and it'll come when it comes. What I have noticed is I can usually tell when the most fertile time of the month is for me. And I have noticed that I'm much more interested in getting up close and personal with my husband around that time. But then again, I'm always interested in, cuddling up to him pretty much any time of the month. So is it unusual? Like, is it noticeably more so? I mean, I've noticed it, so I don't know if he's noticed it. I don't know if he's been paying attention. Um, am I like other women? Well, I honestly don't know. Um, there are a lot of really fascinating studies about how women's behavior shifts as they become more fertile. I actually have a book that I'm probably going to be suggesting as one of the possible reading choices for the next poll. Um, it's called Survival of the Prettiest, and it just the whole book. And I don't know how well liked of a book it is, but when I first was told about it, I got a copy and I read it. I read half of it. Anyway, it was all about things that scientists have noticed about the changes of women's appearance and behavior at different times in their fertile cycle. And so, if I end up reading that book and reviewing it for you guys, I'm probably going to be able to give you guys all sorts of interesting ideas and insights into how women's behavior changes throughout their menstrual cycle. That being said, I don't remember all that much of it. I know that women physically change a little bit. They're altered slightly when they're at their most fertile. They look slightly prettier. I knew this one as a dancer because dancers they earn more money. Exotic dancers earn more money when they're at the fertile peak of their cycle than they do when they're at the not fertile parts of their cycle. I always tried to capitalize on that. Like if I saw that that time was coming around, it was like, oh, okay, I've got to get to work. And then I met my husband. And it's like, well, I should be going to work and I should be trying to earn the money, but really, I just kind of want to stay at home right now. I know that the way women walk and how much they sway their hips at the fertile point of their cycle is changed and slightly exaggerated when they're at their most fertile. What's really interesting is I remember there was this National Geographic thing I was watching. They were talking about how, men always like that super, super hourglass figure, like, boobs and then just huge hips and tiny skinny waist. And it's unnatural and unrealistic. And feminists have been pointing out that it's unnatural and unrealistic for the longest time. Like, oh, men aren't attracted to women, they're attracted to Barbie dolls. There's a reason that that is attractive, why men are attracted to that massive and unrealistic hourglass shape. And it's because the human eye was not designed to capture information as a photograph. Cameras do that. The human eye was designed to look at moving objects. And when a woman is at her most fertile, she tends to sway her hips just a little bit more when she's walking. If she notices that men, particularly attractive men, are watching her as she's walking, she'll sway her hips even more. So it's not necessarily that shape as a still stationary figure that you should be paying attention to. It's that shape when you observe a woman moving her hips from side to side as she walks. The more exaggerated that motion, the more she's displaying her, beauty and sexuality to men. Which is why belly dancing happens so much in strip clubs. Twerking too, but that's another matter. I never understood twerking too much, but I mean I get it, but I don't get it. But lots of hip swaying motions. It catches the eye and it definitely attracts masculine attention. Interestingly enough, there was a study they did on dancing, and they found that they attached like motion sensors to dancers, good dancers and bad dancers, and they put those same motions on the joints of little stick figures and had people judge whether or not the stick figures were good dancers or bad dancers. And they found that the good dancers, like when you're looking at a stick figure, it becomes much more obvious. The good dancers were moving their hips around a lot more. Male or female, it doesn't matter. Both of them were moving their hips around a lot more. And that's because you can really only move your hips around fluidly a lot if you had good spinal health, good back strength. And if you've ever known anybody who's had a back injury, like that will completely mess you up. It doesn't matter how strong your arms are. It doesn't matter how strong your legs are. If you throw your back out, you will be completely immobilized. It will knock you out. And so if you can move your hips around, if you can move your back and your spine fluidly, it's a demonstration of better overall fitness. It's a very rapid way to assess a person as a potential mate. And so, of course, women who are at the peak of their fertility and possibly seeking masculine attention are going to be much more likely to move their hips around, which is a great way to indicate to potential partners, hey, I'm very strong and very healthy, and also, because those two things coincide, I'm very fertile. And so, that's the sort of thing that you can find in a book like Survival of the Prettiest. And so, if you guys pick that one, that's probably what I'm going to be discussing a lot of. And people find that sort of thing offensive, but if you're an exotic dancer, that is the sort of thing you need to know, because you're trying to give those outward indicators of fertility as much as possible. And if you're a man, that's kind of what the rational male is about. You're trying to give outward indicators of overall fitness. So not just physical fitness, which would come from, things like dancing, but also from just being muscular. You're trying to, posture is a great one, also good posture, because posture is one of those things that serves double duty. It indicates, strength and overall good fitness health, but it also indicates that, good social comfort and I guess high serotonin level, which is something that I would not know all that much about, but I guess that's one of the things it indicates. Those are the things that men try to project at women to attract potential mates. Women, on the other hand, hip swaying, makeup that makes you look a little more flushed and aroused. Um, these are things that dancers need to know about. So, of course, I read the book and I didn't quite finish it, but it was interesting. It was definitely interesting, and I would love to do a book review of that one. If you find that at that time of the month, like not the period, but the fertile peak of her cycle, your girlfriend, wife, long term partner is seeking you out and trying to spend time with you and getting affectionate, that's a good sign. If at that time of the month she's really, really cranky at you predictably, that's not a good sign. But is that necessarily a sign that the relationship is, really successful or really, really doomed? It's not the magic 8 ball of sex. It's not going to give you a sure, you know, a dead certain answer. It's a great indicator, and paired up with many other indicators of either health or, disrepair in the relationship, it's a good warning sign, but it's not by itself going to give you the kind of information I think you would really, really need. So, But I mean, if every month at around that fertile cycle she's, chasing after you and saying that she wants to spend a little more time with you, or hey, maybe we should go on a date, good sign. Definitely a good sign. Yeah. I want you to elaborate more on what makes someone boring. I have a sense of humor, personality, etc. when the time calls for it. When I finally shut up, we'll say. When I finally shut up, that's when I get called boring. What kind of effort or lack thereof does he put into not being boring? I'm no dancing monkey. I didn't want you to think I'd forgotten this question because it's a really great question. It's a really great idea to talk about. But I cheated. I'm almost halfway through the mystery method at this point, and honestly, he spends a lot of time talking about that. And so rather than give you kind of a half-assed, inexpert opinion, we'll go to mystery method, and I will be talking about that probably a lot because he spends a lot of time on that idea, that subject, just how to not be boring around women. A lot more time than I've ever spent thinking on that subject. So, I would like to see some summaries of some of the driving philosophies / concepts, etc., behind yourself and your husband's lives, especially as it comes to overcoming the toxicity of modern feminist ideas and anything else that comes to mind on society at large. One thing that immediately comes to mind in regard to that, and I'm sure there will be more in the future, and maybe I'll even talk about, like, rehash some of these ideas in the future or talk about them some more. When my husband and I got married, we kind of looked at our marriage as, I mean, it's the formation of a family. And so it's the formation of a, for lack of a better term, a tribal unit. And so are you loyal to yourself or are you loyal to the tribe? And that's not a lot of people talk about tribal thinking as being unhealthy because, if you're looking at it from a racist standpoint, it can be unhealthy. But when you form a family with a husband or a wife, you're you're forming something bigger than yourself, and this is something my husband and I have talked about a lot. Your loyalty is to the family unit. It's not just to your spouse versus yourself, or one or the other. It's loyalty to the family unit. What solidifies the family, what strengthens the family, what are we doing for our mutually held goal of the family we have created together. And I don't know how many people think that way anymore these days. It usually seems to be like, I'm doing this for her, I'm doing that for her, I'm putting her first, or I'm putting me first. And for us, it's we're putting the family first. I would love to. I mean, I'm too old at this point. I'm too old at this point. But a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple of years, but a few years ago, I would have loved to have gone back to work. I wanted to go back to work, um, and it wasn't the best thing for the family. The kids needed me to be at home, and so I stayed at home. It wasn't my idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to have it all. I wanted to go to work, and I wanted to get my exercise in, and I wanted to kind of socialize a little bit, and then I wanted to come home, and then I wanted to be mom, and I couldn't do both of those things particularly well, so I had to pick one. Um, that was the best thing for the family. And my husband's made decisions that were the best thing for the family. He's looked at it and said, okay, for the good of the family, I'm going to do this. For the good of the family, I'm getting a second job right now because this job, it's not really panning out. It's not paying me what I was hoping it would pay me. They told me that there would be some promotions coming in. They're not. So I'm getting a second job, things like that. He's made decisions like that. Um, they're not always fun decisions. He's not doing it for me. He's doing it for the family. He's doing it so that we can all have a roof over our heads. We can all have food in our bellies. The kids are okay and well taken care of. Um, you know, and me, I'm part of the family too, but the idea is the overarching family, group. And so, this isn't necessarily a kind of thought that you see a lot of, at least that I haven't seen a lot of, especially in my generation. It is something my husband believes in very, very strongly. The family comes first. But that's not just him saying, oh, the family comes first. I have to say that too. Okay, the family comes first because he's putting everything that he has into the well being, welfare, and maintenance of the family unit. So I have to put that in too. And, couples sometimes I think get into these arguments of, well, he's doing more or she's doing more. I'm working harder, you're working harder. And, you know, it can be an issue that people quarrel about sometimes. And for us, it's like, well, we both try to pull our own weight. As much as we can pull, we pull. We both try to balance out as much of our as we can of the tasks. I'm here, I'm manning the fort. I'm trying to be a good house cleaner. I'm trying to be a good house cleaner. And, I'm trying to make sure the kids are well taken care of, clean, fed, entertained. Right now we're homeschooling, so educated, since we're all at home anyway. Um, and he's making sure that there's money to pay the bills, that there's a roof over our heads, that there's food on the table. And, there's a certain degree to which the tasks that we have kind of balance out, but, it's kind of also an each according to his or her ability sort of thing. The idea isn't necessarily, well, I did this, so just to make it fair, you need to do that. It's we're both trying to put what we have into the family. What we have to give, what we have to put forth in effort, we put that into the family. Um, and I mean, again, I just don't see that a lot. And I see couples that, kind of dissolve where it's like cat break. So I see couples kind of struggling with that where, I'm doing this and, that other person isn't pulling their weight. I'm putting forth all this effort and that other person isn't pulling their own fair share. I see couples where it's like, how to make sure that you're getting your fair share of, the good stuff while your partner is, it is putting forth their effort, all that stuff. It's a commitment to the family. It's a commitment, especially when you make those marital vows. The idea is to commit to the family unit. And I mean, very quickly, just because the two of us are committed to the family unit, we're both putting in lots and lots of effort, that doesn't necessarily disrupt the frame. Because Tomasi talked a lot about frame, and like I said, I read ahead in Mystery Method, so I know that Mystery talks about the frame a bit. He's still the leader. I still see him as the leader. I still kind of follow his lead, and I enjoy the idea of following his lead. And I don't think that's necessarily like some sort of mental quirk or a weird fetish on my part. I think that a lot of women like following the lead of a male who is a good leader. Nobody wants to follow a shitty leader, but if you get a good leader, I feel very comfortable and very happy following him. He still holds the frame, but the frame is, we have made a vow to the family unit. And so we are each going to work to keep that together and keep it strong and keep it healthy and put effort into making sure that it stays functional. So, put effort into the kids, put effort into the house, put effort into showing him affection and making sure that he knows that I appreciate him. I'm doing all this stuff, and I think it's important that as a woman, I say, look, this is what a wife should be doing, and this is why a wife should be doing it. You want your husband to feel appreciated. You want your partner to feel appreciated. So I talk about me doing this stuff, and it's important to note that he's also doing this stuff. It's not just a one-sided, I'm constantly like bringing him sandwiches and tea and stuff. He's also helping take care of the family. He's going out, he's working, he's providing for us and taking care of us in that way. It's a lot of work, a monumental amount of work, and it's a very impressive amount of work. And so, it is important for me to let him know that I appreciate his efforts and to be good to him and loving to him. But again, that's not just because I love him. That's also a family unit kind of thing, where we each made the vow, and so we kind of owe it to each other, and it kind of, I don't know, kind of lean against each other in that sense. If you're in a relationship where one of you is doing all the work, one of you is putting forth all the effort, one of you is doing all the heavy lifting, and the other one isn't doing anything, that's not a very stable relationship. That's not a good thing. So, yeah, that's one of the philosophical things that I've noticed about us when we've talked about a relationship, the idea that we're both, deeply committed to the family unit that we've formed together, that we've built together. And another thing about that is it's a unifying cause, and you always want to have a unifying cause with your partner. The more things that you can work toward together as a goal, the better off you're going to be. So for us, the family, the maintenance of our relationship with one another, the maintenance of our marriage and our kids and our family unit that we've built, all of that is a unifying goal for us. And so it's something that we both strive to work on and maintain. Not necessarily in the, marriage is hard work kind of sense, but if you have a relationship and you don't work to maintain it, eventually the relationship will just fall apart. It's like anything else that you have. If you don't keep it maintained, it will just naturally sort of fall apart. So we both believe in maintaining the marriage, maintaining the relationship, and working on fortifying the strength of the family unit. The strength of the pack, the strength of the pride, the strength of the tribe, the group that we formed. And so, it definitely helps to keep us stuck together, I think. When it comes to overcoming modern toxic feminist ideas, I take the red pill. I think I think one of the reasons that I was suggesting in the poll I did earlier, the feminine mystique and also this character analysis of June Cleaver. The reason I was thinking about those two is I realize that mostly men watch this channel, but I think that at some point someone, probably a woman, because women are gonna, be a little bit skeptical of a man saying all this, but somebody needs to come out and say, look, there's a red pill for women too. There's this blue-pilled feminine mentality where it's like you get raised on this feminist bullshit of, oh, I can be as strong as a man, I can be as tough as a man, I can do what a man can do, and I can be totally self-reliant. And yeah, I mean, I was totally self-reliant for a while, barring the fact that I did rely on society to provide me with a place to go to work to do my job, to earn the money to go to a grocery store, which is also a part of a society, to eat the food from the grocery store and then go to my apartment, which I was renting from society. So I mean, we're all kind of, no man is an island, but I was very self-sufficient. I wasn't on like government aid or anything. But that was before that was before I met my husband and got pregnant and started having kids. Kids are very resource intensive little creatures. So, that's when it all starts to really fall apart, and no woman stays in her 20s for forever. So, sooner or later, you do hit that point where it's like, okay, I can't do all the things on my own. I can do maybe these things and I can maybe do these things, but I can't do all of them. If I want to have a family, if I want to have kids, if I want to have grandkids, I can't do that alone. Not successfully, not particularly well. I mean, there are stories of people who are an exception to the rule, but they're an exception to the rule. And the exception is what makes the rule. I need him. And so, if I want to be happy, and that's another thing, like if women really want to be happy, they really need to be taking the red pill. Happiness does not come in feminist empowerment. That doesn't make people happy. And too many women are lied to too much. They have these crazy ideas that I'm going to stay young and pretty forever, and I'm going to be able to do anything that a man can do. It's, somebody needs to come around, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with some of these videos, and tell them the truth. Because otherwise they're going to just keep believing all this stuff. Like, hey, guess what? Your fertility, it has an expiration date, and when you hit that expiration date, it's not fun. I know, because it's nearly a year that I've been trying to get pregnant, and guess what? I'm still not pregnant. And I'm only 33, It's not cool, man. It's not cool. Thank God I didn't put it off, because we've got 3 beautiful children. It's like, if this is the last one, okay. That kind of sucks. Could suck a hell of a lot worse, couldn't it? The red pill. Like, women need the red pill too. And women will be happier when they get the red pill. What qualities, features in a man arouses, not just attracts a woman? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking there. Attracts and arouses tend to be the same thing. They tend to be the same thing. The women tend to be attracted to the same things that will arouse them. So if you're looking at physical features, somebody who's in shape. You don't have to be like this super Arnold Schwarzenegger, muscles bulging out everywhere kind of guy. Some women go after that. Some women like a leaner, fitter. For example, my husband, he was a very wiry man, and he had a 6-pack, but he was just very, very wiry kind of muscle, like not heavy, bulging, big, bulky kind of muscle. The idea is indicators of health and strength and fitness. So if you're a really lean runner, but you've got excellent muscle tone, that's good. That's cool. We like that. We like that. If you're a big bodybuilder and you like, forming a sculpture with your own body, we like that too. It kind of varies from woman to woman. Each woman seems to have like their own thing that they're a little bit more moved by. Like, I remember I was in the strip club one night, and this girl This girl was drooling over this guy, and she's like pointing him out to me. She's like, look at his arms. And so I look over and I see this dude with like arms that were as big around as my waist. Like, not even kidding, as big around as my waist. And the first thing I thought is, oh my God, the pole tricks that I could do if I had arms like that. And I am pretty certain that that was not what that girl was thinking when she was drooling over that guy with his arms. Like, oh my God, look at his arms, look at his arms. Like, I didn't care. I wasn't impressed by that. It didn't really move me. Seeing my husband's six pack for the first time, that was a surprise because when I first met him, he was wearing, baggy t-shirts. He wasn't really dressed to impress much. He just moved into town. He wasn't, like, when he first met me, he wasn't dressed up to impress me very much. He was just kind of, he was a dude. He was a normal looking dude. And then I noticed at some point, which, when we started dating, I found out that he had a six pack, and it was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. It's really awesome. I didn't know that was there, but now that I do, wow, okay. So there are physical features that women are attracted to. Posture is one. Upright posture, an attitude of confidence, confident gesturing, which is something that we'll actually be talking about in the mystery method because I cheated and read ahead, which I've already said about 20 times already in this video. But as far as subconscious mental indicators of that men give off that attract women, those indicators also tend to arouse women. If a man has good control of the frame, women are drawn to that. They're attracted to that, but they're also aroused by that. If a man is energetic and energetic, I'm not going to say too energetic, but if he's not slouching and tired and low energy and just kind of worn out, if he's excitable, like if he's, again, not too excitable, but if he has a sufficient store of energy that he doesn't seem unhealthy, that's going to be attractive, and it's also going to be arousing. If he's interesting, if he's intriguing, if he's mentally interesting, so if he can tell interesting stories about his life, and this is again something we're going to talk about in the mystery method a lot. There's a reason I'm reading the mystery method right now, guys. If he's interesting, if he's an interesting person, that's attractive, but it's also arousing. How arousing are we talking? Like, I don't know, if he does some of these pickup artist kinds of things, like Kino, where he's kind of touching her casually, not like sexually pawing at her, but kind of casually touching her. That gets her much more acquainted to the idea of being touched by a man. But it's also a good way for a man to test out whether or not she wants to be touched by that man. But things like that, all these things kind of put together, that can be pretty darn attractive to a woman. And it can also be pretty arousing. Like, we want to have sex with the men that we're attracted to. So attraction tends to correlate pretty strongly, at least as far as I'm aware, with what arouses us too. I would like to know more about your husband. How does he develop himself as an alpha male? How would he educate your son to become a man? What does your husband think about the rational male? Does he disagree with anything in the book? If yes, which part is it and why? My husband actually hasn't read The Rational Male, so he and I kind of talked about some of the ideas that I wanted to brush past him to see what he thought about them, because I've done that a few times. He seemed to agree with a lot of those ideas when I brought them past him, but I didn't I didn't mention all the different ideas in the book to him. There's a lot of information in that book. But he seemed to agree with most of what I mentioned about it. As far as how he develops himself as an alpha male, I sent him a screenshot of that question, and he told me that when he was like a really early teens, he tried doing the stuff you're told that you should do. So I can't remember the examples he gave me, but think flowers, chocolates, opening the door for women, pulling out the seat so they can sit down, that sort of fluffy stuff that guys are told that they're supposed to do. He tried it and it wasn't working very well for him, and he pretty quickly just realized that that stuff doesn't actually work. It's a lie. So I guess as far as being a natural versus being somebody who learned it, I've always kind of wondered if the naturals aren't just guys who figured it out quicker than others and kind of got red pilled early. And so I don't know how many guys, like, I don't know how many blue pill guys are actually really good naturals. Like, some of them, yes, but I'm not so sure. Like, I think a lot of them are, to some extent or another, just slightly a little more red pilled, and that's how they manage to make things work with women. My husband, early teens, got red pilled, and so he was also growing and developing as a person because he was a teenager, and so he thought, screw it, I'm not going to try and buy the flowers and the chocolates and open the door for them and all that stuff. He invested himself more in his own interests. He started, as he put it, unashamedly pursuing his own interests, and he said it that way, very precisely. And I think that's a very important way to look at it. Instead of instead of being like a gaming nerd and kind of shyly being a gaming nerd, like, oh yeah, I also kind of play video games, I know it's geeky, but you know he was, be a proud, happy gaming nerd, like, oh hey, this is something I do with my buddies, it's great, we love it, this is what I do, this is my idea of a fun time. You can love that or hate it, but this is me. As he said, unashamedly pursuing his own. Kitty? I don't know if you can hear that. He's licking my pillow, and so my pillow is going to have a big wet spot on it because I guess he likes the way I smell or something. He's a weird cat, but we love him. But yeah, unashamedly pursue your own interests. That was something that he said that I've noticed about him, something that I've noticed about, I think, a lot of men. Like, if you're a guy and you have interests that you want to pursue, go pursue those interests. Go learn those things. If you want to learn rock climbing, go learn rock climbing. Maybe you'll hate it, but it's an adventure, and then you can add that to your collection of stories that you can tell women when you first meet them that makes you seem like an interesting person to them. My husband did all sorts of things. Like, he was fascinating when I met him because he had done anything that seemed interesting to him. So, my husband, when I met him, he was telling me about how he used to play the organ. He played the organ. He was actually pretty good at playing the organ. He had a head injury and lost the ability to play the organ, which was really unfortunate because he was pretty good at it and he really liked it. And so, every once in a while he'll talk about learning how to play the organ all over again. He'd have to start from the very beginning and relearn the coordination in his hands. He knew how to sword fight. He learned how to sword fight. My husband actually ended up, he told me one time about this story about how he ended up going into the ER with a sword sticking out of his gut. It's like, even the things that don't work, even the times that, you kind of, that could have gone better, they still make for interesting stories. So, as he said, unashamedly pursue your own interests and goals. And if you're doing that, if you come into your own and you're living your own life, you have control of your own frame. These are more my words and more Tomasi's words here, but this is what he described to me. If you have control of your own frame, if you're living your own life, if you're pursuing your own goals and you're not ashamed of them, if you're unabashedly being you, not necessarily being you as in the why can't women just love me for me, as you're sitting in your mom's basement eating junk food and gaining massive amounts of weight and skipping showers. That's not the kind of loving you for you that anyone's going to really want to grab onto and take a hold of. But if you're just kind of boldly and unashamedly being in the world, that's incredibly attractive. And he found that as he did that, he made friends because he had interests and other people shared those interests. And so he made friends with those other people. And so then he had friends and then he grew socially. And so then he was very socially, very socially skilled and elegant, very socially fluent, and very socially confident, which made him even more attracted to women. So he had the things that you need to attract a woman. He was interesting and exciting. He was socially confident and socially relaxed. He had plenty of opportunities to talk to women as well as men as he was pursuing his interests. And so he was relaxed around women. So when he met me, like one of the things that really drew me to him was he wasn't stumbling all over himself. He wasn't anxious around me. He wasn't just immediately like trying to get in my pants kind of in a lecherous way. He was just very cool and relaxed and he didn't care and life was good. And hey, I need to make some friends. I just moved into town. You want to hang out? That would be cool. He was, that right there is unimaginably attractive to women. And so, of course, he was an alpha because he had control of the frame. He was pursuing his own interests. He wasn't ashamed or embarrassed about anything, that he was doing in his life. If he wanted to be an actor, he would go be an actor. If he wanted to learn sword fighting, he'd go learn sword fighting. If he wanted to, play an organ, he'd play an organ. And so, all of that gave him plenty of social interaction with a myriad of different people and helped him to be socially confident, which is also extremely attractive to women. So it was one of those beautiful upward spirals where the more he went, the better he got and the more alpha he became. And I think that's another reason that a lot of guys are like, and, myself included, it's like, if you want to be attractive to women, work on self-improvement, work on building yourself up and becoming a more whole and complete person as you. Don't necessarily focus outward on women, focus on, building yourself up to be a bigger, better, stronger person. That was his experience, at least, that he gave up really early in his teens on trying to impress women and do all the things that guys are supposed to do, and he just was. And that kind of carefree being, in fact, it does remind me, as I think about it right now, of Tomasi's, Alpha Buddha, I can't remember the guy's name, but the Alpha Buddha, this kid who throws this outrageous party that ends up costing like thousands and thousands of dollars in damages, and he's just kind of like, yeah, so what? I don't care, I threw a party. It was a good party. I know how to throw parties. There is that element that, as I'm going back over my husband's story, I can kind of see it where, go out and be. And don't necessarily be ashamed of the things that you're interested in. Don't be ashamed. Even that little tiny fragment of a moment's hesitation, that moment of, people aren't going to like the fact that my husband and I met a man who made balloon animals. Like that was his thing that he did. And he would put on shows where he would make elaborate balloon sculptures. And it was really cool. Like he made one of the Pope one time that I saw that was just incredibly detailed, and that was his thing. He made balloon sculptures. Like it's a unique hobby, but he was really excited about it. He was happy about it. He wasn't ashamed of it. A lot of people thought it was pretty cool. He put on some performance pieces where he did balloon sculptures in front of everybody, and people thought that was really cool. He had his niche, and he was very open and unashamed about it, and so people were pretty receptive to it. Like, oh, hey, I've never seen that before. That's pretty cool. And maybe it's not your sort of thing, balloon sculptures, but you can, when you meet somebody like that, you can immediately respect the fact that they're comfortable with who they are and they're comfortable with what they like to do. And you can like it or you can dislike it, but that's still them. It's not the same as, why can't she just love me for me? If you don't bring anything to the table, then, what is there to love? Who are you? Have you developed yourself in any way? Have you built yourself up? Who are you? Go out and answer that question, and don't feel ashamed of the answers that you find, you know. Anyway, that was what he had to say, and it was really interesting. But anyway, that these were some of the ideas that you guys put forth for videos. Um, Hopefully, I covered them reasonably well. I don't know if I should go back and make more videos elaborating on them, and some of them I know will be elaborated on just in the process of going through the mystery method. Um, I really love the video ideas, and hopefully at some point in the future I'll have more time on my hands so I can actually make individual videos talking about some of these ideas more. I have I have so many video ideas that I've written down, like I've taken notes, and it's like I have all these things I want to talk about, and there's just no way that I'm going to be able to talk about them. Um, I feel very lucky that I'm able to put out one video a week. So, you know, probably after Mystery Method, if I see any other really good, awesome ideas, because um, I've really enjoyed, just kind of wandering around the comments in YouTube and talking with people, because YouTube in particular has some really awesome comments, and YouTube in particular does not notify me about the awesome comments that I get, which is um, but yeah, YouTube, of all the places that I've had interesting conversations, I think YouTube, mine's has some pretty good ones too, but YouTube has had some really amazing conversations about, you know, human sexuality, intergender kind of relationships. Um, it's been awesome, you guys. And so I'm incredibly thankful, and I definitely look forward to hearing any other ideas that you guys have for videos that I can make that you would be interested in seeing. Um, that would be cool. I would love to do that with you guys. And so, yeah, next week we will be starting on the mystery method, and probably be addressing a lot more what women are attracted to and how to avoid being boring. I'll talk to you guys later.